Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of From Idea to Launch. Before we get back into authentication, I'm just going to give you a brief overview, a reminder of what we're even doing. So here's this is what the app we're building. We're going in and we're just creating some events like this, designing Flock.2, and getting ratings on them. So you can send a link around and copy this link and get feedback on anything. This is what we're building. And today we're focusing on authentication, so you get this screen where you get hello with your name on it, you have some sort of account screen here with logging out inside, and you can actually create events and set them around. So last time we briefly went through and made sure we got cookies and authentication signing tokens, JWTs, JSON Web Tokens, send them to the front end, store them as cookies, and now we're going to handle actually keeping those sessions and going and getting data with the cookie. So right now, this is the home page. This is also the home page once you're authenticated. So what we want is that when we come to this home page, instead of showing this gross thing, we're going to have it show a personalized page. Oops, I refreshed and it's alerting our token. A personalized page like this that'll give us some information about the events and our rating and that sort of thing. So let's jump into that. So we already went and created our authenticate route. We signed the user once it's authenticated, and then boom, 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 inside of our login page, we set that cookie only secure if it's in production, because we're not using HTTPS, big issues last time, and then we redirect to the home page. So once we're on that home page, what we want to do is go and fetch the user data and bring it back. So we're going to do two things. First thing we're going to do is we'll create a hook. React hooks! React hooks! For the win, that allows us to do authentication kind of simply, or reusably, I guess you could say, and always providing us with the user object. And then the other thing is we're going to make sure we fetch the information before this page gets to the front end. So we're going to use something called, and we'll just export async function called getServerSideProps. And we'll talk a bit about this when we get to it, but pretty much it's, NextJS allows us to render it a couple different ways, and we'll do a detour, I think, on the next video to show you the other version of this, which is called getStaticProps, I think it's called. I don't remember exactly the name of it, but we'll do a video on it next time. This one here allows us, because NextJS either can generate static pages at build time, which is what getStaticProps will allow us to do. We can generate a server-side rendered, or server-side, it's server-side rendered, right? Yeah, server-side rendered page, which is what getServerSideProps allows us to do. And last but not least, if we include neither of those functions, then this will become static HTML. And then obviously in the front end gets hydrated with React. So if you have click functions, that sort of thing, we bring it in there. But we're going to do getServerSideProps and fetch the data in here so that if I'm authenticated, if I have that cookie, then I don't want to see a flash of I'm here, I'm not there. If you take a look here, if I refresh here, oops, I'm on the right window. If I refresh here, you see that flash? That's because when I first wrote this, I didn't have anything going and fetching with my token from the very beginning. And so I get this flash of, oh my gosh, you're here, you're not there. What we want is actually get the data first on the server, so when we come back, we automatically see this page if we're authenticated and we have that cookie. So let's go ahead and do that. First, we're going to create a getServerSideProps, and then we're going to create a way of getting it on the front end, just navigating around, having access to that user object. So in context, you're kind of getting, because it's on the server, you're getting things like request and response and the query, query. And inside this request, you do have cookies. Cookies. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get, using JS cookie, we're going to get the cookies and get our cookie, where is it called, _WSP, out of there, and send that as part of a request to get our user data. Okay, so what we're going to use here inside of getServerSideProps is a new cookies function. So JS cookie works really well on the front end, but we're going to use something else on the back end. We don't need this anymore right here, so we'll get rid of this. We're going to add a new library, called yarn add cookies, just cookies. We'll add that up in there, and we'll import it over here. Import cookies from cookies. Perfect. And on the back end, this getServerSideProps, still inside a lovely page function on the front end in the pages directory. getServerSideProps we can put in const cookies. We could also parse these ourselves, but I'm just a bit lazy, I guess. New cookies. And then we're going to pass in the request object, .request, context.request. Now, inside of getServerSideProps, we always need to return out this structure of objects, so an object here with a props key in here. And anything inside of this props key will get passed into the props over here. So in here, we get the cookie out with that request object. Now we need to get the user, which we can probably do directly. So let's try this. Import auth service from app1 services auth. And we can do const payload, which is what we get out of this verify method, const payload. It's already an async function, so we can do await auth service.verify, and we can pass in that key, so cookies.get, and our token is WSP. Let's see if this goes. Let's start the server up. So we typically couldn't import this service on the front end, but because we're using it in the back end, let's see if that works out. Lovely. I didn't console anything. Console.log payload. There. Refresh. There we go. So because this server-side function gets run in the back end, any import we use that normally wouldn't be allowed to be imported on the front end, because it's used like it's a back end module for Node.js, we can import it in here and it gets removed from our imports before shipping the page, which is amazing. Which means we can also do import user from, and then boop models. I'm definitely not typing inside the string. Amazing. There we go. And we can go const user is equal to await user.find one underscore ID being payload dot ID. And then we can ship back that user, which is great. We'll just do like a over here .to object, just so we get the object back. And then in the front end, let's just alert maybe. No, console.log. We'll do that. Props.user, which is what we should get back if we have a valid user. Oh my gosh, user of undefined. You know why? I keep doing this to myself. I didn't connect to the database. How am I supposed to fulfill a request if I'm not connected to the database? Database. Service. Database. There we go. Over here, so get that, then we'll do database service.connect. Boom, there we go. Refresh. Cannot be serialized as JSON. Uh-oh. Why not? User.createAt in this object date. It only returns serializable objects. I did 2 object. What's wrong with this? Console.log user. Let's take a look. So refresh here. I see, because this is like an actual date. Let's just try and user is JSON.stringify user, and then JSON.parse. JSON.parse user. There we go. Classic serialize, deserialize. And that works perfectly. And let's look in here. Here's our object. And our user's in there. Amazing. One thing we forgot to do is I don't want to include, I just want to include maybe the name. -1. Just the name. I don't really need anything else. Created at, password ID, definitely don't want to send. Email, don't really need, so just the name is fine. So if you refresh this, whoops, where am I? Here we go. Just the ID and the name. Perfect. So I don't know why this to object didn't convert anything, but we'll just take that out. We don't actually need it anymore. Boom, because we're using this nasty method of parse unparse. Wonderful. So on the back end, before we even render the first page, when the request is made, we're going in, getting our cookies, getting the cookie that we want to check, connecting to the database, getting the user and sending the user back in the initial render, which is great. So maybe let's just take this and pop it into a service so we can reuse it across different pages. So So we'll go into, maybe we'll do it in the auth service, and we'll copy all of this. We'll copy all of this, like that. Inside of our auth service, we'll create a function down here, async function get user from cookie. Boom, and we'll take the request inside of there. So we don't need this, we just pass the request. So cookies, which we'll need to import. Where am I? Here we go. Cookies, import that. We'll just grab all of these. Boom, database, not the database. Here, auth, bring in cookies. We're already in services auth, we don't need that. Services database, we can just do this. We need the database connection, and then models user, that works perfectly fine. So then over here, we got the cookies. Now auth service.verify, we can just do a way to verify because it's already defined right here. We have that imported, we get the payload, the name, we get the user out, and we'll just return the user directly here. Return just like this. Stringify and then parse, make sure it's all serialized for us ready to go. And then export that, whatever the function's called, get user from cookie. Boom. In that index page, get rid of all this junk. Ooh, we need the auth service. Get rid of all the rest of that junk. In here, user is just going to be await auth service dot get user from cookie, and then pass context dot request. And that should get us a nice reusable function to get us the user on render. So refresh here, take a look here, and then we have the user. Perfect. And the other thing is that if I do some navigation inside of these routes, I won't actually have the user. So what we want to do is we want to create some sort of hook that looks like we want to get the user out for equals use auth, and we want to pass in that initial version if we have it, props.user, something like this. So we're going to create a directory. So we'll import use auth from, and we'll go up one, hooks/use auth. Let's create a new directory in here. Boop. Hooks/use auth, auth.js. Oh no, JSO. That's not a thing. Maybe it is. Okay, a few things we need in here. Import use state from React. Import fetch from isomorphic. Unfetch. What else do we need? Import one of my favorite libraries. Use SWR from SWR. And is that all we need? No, it's not. Import cookie from JS cookie. So this is running on the front end. Actually, it's using React. JS cookie. And we're exporting our default function, use auth. There we go, and it takes in the initial value. Okay, so what are we using in here? What are we doing? So we're going to use auth on the front end to make sure we get out the user object if we're navigating internally, as opposed to what this function does over here is fetch from the server. So whenever this page gets rendered or the initial request, then we can use this function. But if we're navigating inside of the application, more than likely we're not fetching from the server. We're just rendering the one-page app. And so we want to make sure that we still get that user even if we're not coming from the server. So we use use auth rather, give us the initial user if we do request it, and then populate it, and then we can get the user from then on out. Now SWR is amazing. I don't remember exactly what it stands for. Pretty well what it does is it gives you a key and kind of does some caching and revalidation and auto fetching for you, which is brilliant. And so we'll use that for our user to make sure that we are getting the correct values coming through and making sure that it auto keeps up to date our user object for making changes, which we shouldn't, but do we even need state? I don't even think we need state. We'll remove that. So first thing we're going to do is declare the user, which in SWR it only returns data, but then we'll just rename it as user, as use SWR. We'll pass in the key over here for us. It's going to be API, and this is the route to this request, and I'll show you how it's used. By default, it does some automatic fetching for you, but I'm going to override that. API/user, is that what I called it? So look in our pages, our API routes, API/user. Did we implement it? We did implement it. Wonderful. Authorization, so that's all ready to go and to get us our user object from last time. So use SWDR, we want to fetch this, and then the second parameter here is how we're going to fetch it. So we're going to use, it's going to take a route, it's a function that takes a route, and then we're going to use our fetch, which we're going to want to return, naturally. We're going to fetch our route. We can be here, we can use a dynamic route, just because we don't need, we're on the front end, we don't need to use this on the back end. So we can use a dynamic route. So /API/user, we want to pass in a header of, you guessed it, authorization. And in here we can do cookie.get_WSP. Wonderful. And then from here, we'll just do a simple .then. Actually, let's just write it out nicely. Let's not return this. Const auth request equals this. And we're going to do async here. Oh, wait, there. Boom, and then if it's okay, auth request dot okay. It means we have a successful fetch of that user, which means we can straight up just return auth request dot JSON. There we go. Otherwise, it's not valid for some reason, and more than likely we want to do some sort of logging out. Log out, which for us is going to be clear.cookie.remove _WSP. And then we'll bring in the router, which we didn't bring in, which will be replace with, or push, maybe, the slash. Or what we can do here is just reload the page. Just because if we're on the front end, or if we're on that route, and we try and push in that route again, it's not going to do anything. So we'll force a reload. Hopefully we have some logic that, or maybe we can put it in later, that refreshes us and brings us back to, if we're authenticated, kicks us out and brings us back somewhere else. So remove the cookie, force a reload, and move on. Maybe we should just return null out of that. I don't actually know what will happen if we don't return anything. I guess it'll default return undefined. Let's just do that. There we go. Now the third parameter over here, before we import the router, is the initial data, which I called initial value, which you can just change over here. You just have to do a little bit less typing. Initial data. So we pass that user in, it's going to not even bother fetching right away, and it can use that user automatically. I spelled, did I? Const. What's wrong here? What is wrong here? Why is Prettier upset? Someone's yelling at me for sure. What is... Yep. Probably I should declare it as a function. That would be useful. Perfect. Boom. Now let's import that router before I forget as well. Import router from next router. And we can return out that user object. Now I'd like to do a few things here. We'll return out that user object. We'll spread it in user object. But we probably want some like logout functionality here as well that's kind of attached. So we can say logout, and we're going to do the exact same thing we have in here. Remove the token and force a reload. And we're going to use a function called mutate, which we'll get out of here, mutate. Mutate forces a reevaluation of the server object. And so in here, we'll do this, and we'll call mutate. And this will say, go and check to make sure we're getting back the proper data for this, which will give us this. It will be not okay because the token's invalid, and then it'll reload. So we may not need to do that here, but we'll definitely have to remove this token, and then we'll just mutate. Perfect, there we go. So there's a nice little hook. It allows us to get the user object out by default using that route. We set it up so we can pass that authorization header every time. It's a GET request, wonderful. And then if it's okay, we just send back the JSON. It'll give us back this user, and then we can use that user in the object. So inside of our index page, inside of our user here, use auth, we're passing in the initial version of that user, so we shouldn't have to do any fetching, but it'll revalidate for us if we do any moving around inside of that page. So let's check that out. Printing now. prop is not defined. Makes sense. Here we go. Invalid hook call. Oh my goodness. I fixed it. You know what it was? I didn't install the library SWR. Okay, that's fine. It's there now. So here we are. Let's go onto the index page. And of course, my token is expired. That's lovely. That's console.log the user here. JBT must be provided. Lovely. So in our function getUser from cookie, let's go in there. Verify failed. So we'll do a try catch around that. So try and do this. If that fails, I guess we should probably take payload out. Let payload over here. Payload. And if that fails, then we'll return an empty object. Or even better, null. We could, no, that'd be an infinite loop, don't do that. Okay, return null, props, and there we go. Okay. Refresh. So this, oh no, I have an infinite loop. Stop refreshing. Stop. There we go. So there's an infinite loop somewhere here. I wonder if it's in this. If this is null, it's going to try and fetch, and then break, and then redo this and reload. Let's not reload. Let's just remove the token. Let's try that. There we go. Perfect. Let's take a look at the user object. So all it has is the logout function because it doesn't exist because the token got apparently a 500 server error on useauth. But it should be a 401. Why did it get 500? So confused. I also didn't connect to the database in here. Gosh. I imported it, but didn't connect to the database. Again, dot connect. There we go. Boom. So let's see. Res, that's why I got 500. I just misspelled for 401. Beautiful. So now we got 401 unauthorized. Perfect. Okay. So let's go ahead and log in. There we are. Is this my account? Nope, that wasn't it. ABC123, and I believe it was my emails plus junk. Login. There we go. And we should have a user object. There we go. Got that user object plus the logout function, which is brilliant on the first render. So then we can choose to show different content. Where are we? Login index page, here we go. Based on if you're the user or not. So we can check, we can say either hello, welcome to the second YouTube video, which is no longer anymore. Let's just change that to the 5th. No, it's the 6th. 6th YouTube video. We can do that. But if we have a user, we can say bonjour, and then we use the user.name. Oh, we need to put that in a string. Bonjour, and then user.name. Boom, boom. Otherwise, we can just put this string in here. Oh my goodness, I'd be all happy. There we go. Oh, somehow I got logged out. What happened there? Hello? What? Oh dear, unauthorized already. Okay, so let's log in. I don't know what happened there. Junk. ABC, 1, 2, 3. Enter. Bonjour, Eric. There we go. Now we're all happy. We have a token. We have Bonjour, Eric in there because it is authenticated. And you saw that it came, no flash. Break from the server. Amazing. So that's kind of the basics of authentication, using a bunch of lovely methods that NextJS allows us to do to avoid having the server, having the front end do all of it. So we have this nice hook, use auth. Use auth uses use SWR, which is an amazing hook that does data fetching for us, quote unquote. It caches it as well. Some awesome features you should take a look at. Where we go and we fetch using our token, our cookie that we've stored, and we get back the data response properly. We also include this logget function, which we'll use later on. On top of that, we have this amazing getServerSideProps function, which really allows us to get rid of that whole flashing at the beginning of a render, because it executes on the server using this auth service get users from cookie method that we created, which goes directly to the database. Over here you can see directly to the database and finds that user and then gives it back to us. Now, best thing about NextJS is that because this executes on the server side, in here is all Node.js code. Node.js code, all the imports like auth service, which typically could not run on the front end, get removed because it's only executed in here, which is amazing, so that we can actually bring in server functions inside of our NextJS or our front end code and only execute and have no issues on the front end when this actually gets rendered. So there we go. There's a kind of introduction to authentication. That was part 2 of the whole situation. So first part, creating and signing our JWT tokens, JWTs, and then bringing it to the front end, storing it in a cookie. This here is we're using that cookie to make sure we can fetch things on first render from the server with server-side rendering, and also using a default hook, a custom hook, and use SWR to do automatic refreshing for us as we navigate internally. So I hope you liked this video. It went smoother. My OBS didn't crash a single time throughout this whole video. So I hope you liked it. Like and subscribe, and you'll see more of this. Next time, we're going to actually go into building that interface and maybe using some, what do you call those, animations with further motion. See you!